Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, do the Dodgers have that dog already on the roster? I think so, and I think he just hasn't been here the last two postseasons. We take a quick look back at the trade deadline based on performances that happened in Game 1 of the ALCS. If you're a Dodger fan, who should you root for in the NLCS? We'll get into all that, so let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. This is a daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. Find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And if you want to be an everydayer or be on your path to becoming an everydayer, all you have to do is subscribe and listen and watch every single day. And boom, you're an everydayer. We appreciate you if you already are one. We appreciate you if you want to be one. And we still appreciate you, maybe not as much, if you're not an everydayer. If this is your first time listening or watching, I'm Samperio and usually joined by co-host Jeff Snider. But I'm rolling solo for the day. And we are both lifelong Dodger fans who have watched a lot of Dodger games. We've covered the team in the past and present. We've been in the press box, been in the locker room. We've been in various stadiums to watch the Dodgers. We've been at Camelback Ranch. Just a lot of different ways that we've seen the Dodgers. And we think we can bring knowledgeable and rational thought to being a Dodger fan. And if not, at least to be someone you can argue with on the screen. So that's what we're here to do. And I'm currently in Atlanta for Game 1 and 2 of the NLCS. I thought I'd be in Atlanta for Game 1 and 2 of the NLCS, but to watch the Dodgers. But we're not doing that. But I'm here for work, helping out Game 1 and 2 of the NLCS. There's going to be an alternative broadcast with Latino players. Kind of similar to Manning casts on Monday Night Football, but it'll be kind of like that, but with Latino players talking as the NLCS is going on. So if you want to check that out, it's going to be on True TV and streaming on Max. Originally, this was a split episode, but Jeff had some technical difficulties on his side, and now I'm going solo today. So we know that on Friday we kind of put out a call for fire Dave Roberts and to get your pitches in and all that kind of stuff. We'll still get to that at some point this week. So if you still have ideas, if you still believe that Dave Roberts should be fired, and you have reasons, and you have a good person to replace him that is an upgrade, then we're still hearing on that. But I'm here to talk about some of this stuff that I've seen on social media and kind of talk through my perspective on it. And it's, we touched on it a little bit last week with people bringing up Bryce Harper and how he loves Philadelphia and, rides for the team and brings that passion and everything else. And how the Dodgers don't have that, almost directly in the sense of, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts as being, the star that just represents and holds up for the city, for the team, for whatever. And I've been thinking about this a little bit the last, few days since Dodger eliminated, and it didn't hit me initially, but then I'm just kind of thinking about it. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. The Dodgers have that dog. They have that one person that kind of a team can, one, rally around, two, that just has that mentality of, I'm not going to lose. You're not going to beat me. I'm going to be, respected. And if I'm not respected, I'm going to go get my respect. And it's Walker Buehler. And I was hoping that the Dodgers hadn't lost in the 2019 NLDS, because then the stat would be that the Dodgers have never been eliminated in the NLDS while Walker Buehler has been on the roster, um, or on the postseason roster at more specifically. But I think it still kind of stands up, because like 2019, they almost I can almost say, not guaranteed, but if Dave Roberts goes to his bullpen rather than to Clayton Kershaw in late in that game, or even after Kershaw got the end of the inning, and then you cut the fresh inning and you go with your bullpen, if the Dodgers win that game and they go into the NLCS that year, and kind of goes from there on what happens. But Walker Buehler is that guy, and I know some people might want it to be an offensive player just because they play in every game, and they can have a bigger impact on a day-to-day basis. Like Walker Buehler is that dude. Like Walker Buehler has that confidence, has that swagger, has that, for lack of a better term, that FU attitude. He brings an edge to the team, and he performs. For the most part, he's performed in the postseason. And, started in 2018 where he was the guy kind of leading the way. And then, the one game they did win the World Series, it wasn't directly because of him. Obviously, that game went a lot of innings after he came out of the game, but he set that tone. He shut that Red Sox offense down. Even 2019 Game 5, he had set that tone. He had given the Dodgers what they needed. Unfortunately, it didn't go that way. 2020, he was that guy kind of leading the way. 2021, he had a couple starts in the NLDS, and he got it done. And has he always gotten it done? No, but none of the other people that people might reference as that dog or that person, get it done every single time. But for the most part, Walker Buehler's been that guy, and he brings that intensity, that edge, that that mentality. And I can understand if you're listening to this and you should like, well, it should be Mookie, it should be Freddie, or it should be somebody on the offensive side. And I can understand that, and I believe that still holds some resonance if you do believe that you need a player like that, or you need somebody like that, or you need a personality like that, and you want it to be on the offensive side. Then I can understand that. But honestly, I don't know if Walker Buehler swings both series this year. I know both series of the NLDS last year and this year, but they definitely, I can say that he doesn't give up 6 runs in the first. He doesn't give up 3 runs in the first, and he might steal you a game in each series, and then you're on to Game 5 if that's the case, or you win it in 4, depending on if he pitches 2 games. In this series, if you stole a game, and then he pitches another game, and that's the difference. And I think that's kind of where it sits. I think, and it's tough because it's not as easy as saying, oh well, they'll have Walker Buehler back next year, and that's how it'll be. He's coming off his second Tommy John surgery. The mentality is definitely still going to be there. He had that mentality this year, trying to get back. I mean, he, coming back from a second Tommy John surgery to get on the mound in a professional game this year was a big accomplishment. We trusted in him so much that at one point, I was convinced he was coming back, and then I was convinced he wasn't, and I was convinced he was again, and then he got shut down. So I think kind of where it sits for him is, I hope that the stuff comes back, or I hope the stuff matches the intensity and that fire and that passion and everything that he brings to the team. Hope his stuff can match that, because if it does, then obviously the Dodgers have that person once again. But also just because it helps the Dodgers win. He gets the job done, and he's gotten the job done multiple times when they needed it. And like that, I don't think it directly changes the outcome of the last 2 years, but I do think it changes some outcomes that could have changed the overall outcome. And I do think, you can, as an offensive player, you can take some of that and get some of that passion and that fire and whatever else, things that may not matter, but maybe do matter. There's a fine line between trying to figure that out. I think that's where it comes from. And I think, sitting behind a guy like Walker Buehler, you feel that. Obviously, him pitching well was going to help the offense regardless because you might not need to score as many runs. But I do think that that's that fire that some people might want. So I'm excited to see Walker Buehler come back next season, not just for postseason sake or to prove a point or anything. I really just want to see him because I like seeing him pitch, and I like having that mentality. But just to see if it does help out. So the Jordan Montgomery pitched very well for the Rangers last night in Game 1 of the ALCS, in which the Rangers won. And talk a little bit about the trade deadline because obviously that's been a topic of contention now that the Dodgers have lost and they didn't get anything or they didn't have anyone at the trade deadline that really made a huge impact. So that's what's on tap. So let's stay locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Have you ever needed tickets last minute, but you didn't know what to do or you didn't know which app to use, and you were just like, you know what, I wish there was just one app that made it easy that I could find my tickets and not have to worry about it. That's the Gametime app. Because you don't have to worry about tickets to your next event. Shouldn't have to worry about, finding the best price by looking through multiple ways of finding tickets. You should be able to have that all in one, and that's what the Gametime app with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from the seat, best price guarantee. Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. So why not go check it out now? And of all this, I think the biggest thing with Gametime is Gametime guarantee. If you buy tickets, you can feel comfortable in knowing that if you do end up finding cheaper tickets or cheaper tickets come across your way and they're in the same section and same row as yours, the Gametime guarantee gets you 110% of the difference. So you'll actually make a little bit of money or get some money back, and you'll be able to still go and enjoy the game. So that's what is there for the Gametime. That's what's there with the Gametime app, and that's all you really need. And like I said, all the other stuff is just gravy on top of that. You can see what your seats look like before you buy. You can get tickets all the way up till game time, literally. And it's all there for you in one easy app. So go check out the Gametime app. Go download it if you don't already have it. And take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app right now. Create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's Gametime app. Go download it right now. Redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. Make sure to subscribe. You can find us where you find podcasts and on YouTube. We're here for you every Monday through Friday for about 30 minutes. So become an every day or by listening or watching every day. Remember SiriusXM or the SXM app. You can listen to games on there if you're still keeping up with the MLB playoffs. And if not, just remember them for next year when you want to watch or listen to the Dodgers. You can search Dodgers and home broadcast for any game. All right. So as I mentioned, Jordan Montgomery pitched last night and pitched very well for the Rangers. Not allow a run. He pitched into the seventh inning. He honestly they had someone warming up at one point in like the fourth inning. He pushed through that and ended up giving 3 more innings. In this day and age, you don't normally see pitchers pitch that deep into games in the postseason. This game featured 2 of them, 2 guys that were both traded at the trade deadline, actually, too, in Justin Verlander and Jordan Montgomery. And that got me thinking, trade deadline has been a topic of what I've seen on the timeline or, on social media, whatever, for the Dodgers and just kind of, the complaints about it and warranted in the sense that the Dodgers didn't do enough at the deadline to kind of cover what was the team's biggest issues. We've obviously talked about the trade deadline in depth, and if you say, "Oh, the Dodgers didn't do anything at the deadline," or Friedman didn't care, or whatever, yes, by definition of the results of the trade deadline, the Dodgers didn't do enough to address the issues they had. But in the other sense, is that it wasn't for lack of trying, at least on the starting pitching front. The Dodgers were linked to Justin Verlander and would likely have been a potential destination if the Houston Astros didn't step in, if Justin Verlander, who obviously feels comfortable in Houston, kind of forced his way there because he did have, the means to do so. And that's out of the Dodgers' control. Like, I don't know how deep it was in the sense of, Houston or bust. If the Dodgers had overwhelmed the Mets with an offer, would that have made a difference? I don't know, at all. But again, it didn't seem like it was a move that was going to happen once Houston kind of stepped in and was serious about it. And that was maybe one of the best, if not the best, starting pitcher that got traded at the deadline. And it didn't happen that way. Max Scherzer, another one. He's on the ALCS roster for Houston after not pitching in the NLDS and not being on the roster, and obviously was hurt all of September. I don't think that was someone that was coming back here anyways, especially with the no trade clause. Jordan Montgomery probably performed the best, or top three of all the starters traded at the deadline. But even then, he had he's not a guy you're acquiring per se for a game one start. And obviously he pitched game one last night and did very well. But I think that's one of those trades that ends up working out for you. But I don't think fans are excited in the moment. Like if the Dodgers trade deadline had been Jordan Montgomery instead of Lance Lynn in the moment, I think we would have had the same complaints that they had at the deadline. The Dodgers didn't do enough to go out and get what they needed. But this one would have been more performance based because obviously Jordan Montgomery has performed so far in the postseason. He did have an okay start in the ALDS, 4 innings, 4 runs, but in the other 2 starts, I don't think he allowed runs in each of the other 2 starts in the wild card round and now the ALCS. Eduardo Rodriguez, we didn't get to see in the postseason, but that was someone the Dodgers had already made a trade for in a sense, and then he ended up rejecting that trade. And whether it was the Tigers didn't see there being an issue, whether they talked to the agent and he kind of maybe said there was going to be an issue, and then last minute there was an issue. Whatever the case, Dodgers had made that. Whatever the trade was, it was in place. Didn't go through. And, again, that's one where we don't know what would have happened. Would that have made a difference? I don't know. But beyond that, I mean, there wasn't anyone traded or even other people that the Dodgers or that Dodger fans may have wanted. Lucas Giolito didn't work out. Jack Flaherty, he didn't even pitch for the Orioles at all in the postseason. Wasn't necessarily a factor down the stretch. It's just so hard to kind of predict. You can go out and get the biggest and best name, and the Dodgers have done that in the past. They went out and got Yu Darvish in 2017, and it worked out for the most part, obviously, until the World Series, and it didn't work out. And now, Yu Darvish is not the most liked name maybe among Dodger fans. And that same year, obviously, Justin Verlander got traded. a month later after the actual deadline and the waiver deadline. And that ended up, working out. The Dodgers did beat him in the World Series. You know, he might have had different luck on the other side, but again, the Dodgers had already traded for Yu Darvish. Yu Darvish was the better pitcher at around the deadline time. He was an all-star that year. Verlander, I don't think you could have known what was going to happen with him. If you do, either one, a little bit of revisionist history, or two, you just are a very good talent scout. But I think this year's trade deadline is hard to judge and get too mad at when the Dodgers were in on two of the biggest names that were available at the deadline, at least more readily available, in Eduardo Rodriguez and Verlander, and for different reasons, those both didn't come to fruition. Dylan Cease was a name that I kind of got excited about once Verlander and guys like that were off the table. It would have come with some team control, who would have brought a theoretical ace, or at least an ace on this team to the roster. But again, even he didn't pitch well in the second half. But it's a lot different when you're pitching for a bad team, and maybe not as motivated than if you're pitching. Not to say anything about Dylan Cease and his motivation, but that's just natural. If you're on a winning team, you might perform better because you're more into. I don't know, but whatever the case was, this trade deadline, I don't know if there was enough out there in this deadline to kind of mask what ended up being the issues for the Dodgers, because unless you traded for somebody that didn't get traded or that wasn't necessarily readily available, or anything like that, I don't know if that's the case, in the sense that he pitches better. And again, even if the Dodgers had traded for Jordan Montgomery, obviously it would have been dependent on how he pitched down the stretch, but he likely would have gotten the same start that Lance Lynn got for the Dodgers in Game 3, which, if he does pitch well, guarantees you one game there. But you still have to win other games with, like, Kershaw and Miller now, unless Montgomery just came in and was locked down and he gets a Game 1 or 2 start potentially, which could have happened. So I think the trade deadline obviously wasn't fruitful. And after those first couple weeks, didn't bring much to the team overall. Kike had a decent postseason. Rosario kind of fell off after the first 2 weeks, didn't even make the NLDS roster. It was, Ryan Yarbrough was cool, but again, wasn't on the NLDS roster. So I think it's fair to say the deadline didn't help the Dodgers, but I also think if you look at it through a more rational lens, the Dodgers would have either had to do something that didn't happen, in the sense of getting a player that didn't get traded, or they would have had to target a different type of player like a Jordan Montgomery. Maybe they wouldn't have targeted in the past because they're looking for a 1 or 2, not necessarily a guy that in their eyes might be a number 3 type pitcher. So it happens. Last segment of the day is, as a Dodgers fan, who are you rooting for in the NLCS, if you even care, if you even watch? I have some thoughts on that, so that's what we're going to get into. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. October baseball is back, and you can make your postseason debut with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Now, the Dodgers have lost, but that doesn't mean the postseason has to be lost for you. It doesn't have to be a loss. You can make it a win with FanDuel, because if you join FanDuel today, you get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So go ahead, put a $5 bet down on something to happen in Game 1 of NLCS tonight. Doesn't matter too much what it is, because you're going to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed anyway. So if you think that the Phillies are going to win, you can put $5 on the Phillies. If you think the D-backs are going, you can put $5 on that. If you think Zach Gallen is going to go 6 innings, you can put money on that. If you think that Bryce Harper is going to hit a home run, you can put money on that. You can do all that with FanDuel. So if you get the FanDuel app, you can check it all out, get in on the action from the first pitch until the final out. All you got to do is visit fanduel.com/locked on to create your new account, bet on everything from strikeouts to home runs to who will win the game. And if you don't want to wait the whole game to get a win, predict what will happen in the next at bat with quick bets. If if the first batter is Corbin Carroll and he gets out and you think, oh, I think Ketel Marte is going to hit a double, you can put that down and win really quick with quick bets. Go check that out right now, fanduel.com/locked on. Get it, check it out, and make this postseason more fruitful than it has for yourself than it was for the Dodgers. So step up to the plate this postseason with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Just head over to fanduel.com/locked on right now. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. If we're not your first listen of the day, we would ask you to consider making us your first listen of the day. If you have a commute to work, we can probably fit in there, because if you listen on double speed, that's 15 minutes. If you listen regular speed, that's 30 minutes. Depending how long your commute is, we can fit in there. Or maybe, I know there's some listeners that listen to us on their workout in the morning, or maybe a morning walk, something like that. First lesson of the day, check us out. If not, make us at least one of your listens of the day, and that makes you an everydayer, which is already a winning mentality for us. So go do that, and then SiriusXM or the SXM app can help you out with broadcasts of the games right now, or the home broadcast for any Dodger game next season. Let's finish up on the NLCS. Starts tonight. The Philadelphia Phillies are hosting the Arizona Diamondbacks. The 90-win Philadelphia Phillies are hosting the 84-win Arizona Diamondbacks. It is definitely not the NLCS that maybe a lot of fans expected. Definitely not one that maybe MLB is extremely excited for in terms of ratings. But it's the one that we have. And honestly, like, before the throwing out Dodger fandom, Rangers, Astros, Phillies, Diamondbacks doesn't sound like, quote unquote, the sexiest matchups, at least, in terms of ratings and teams and everything else. But, just based on obviously the way they've been playing this postseason, like Diamondbacks, Phillies, both teams have had to win 2 series to get here, and they've had to beat the 100-win teams to get here. And, they're both seem on fire. Like, as a Dodgers fan, you're like, oh man, the Diamondbacks are on fire. There's no way to stop them. But you look on the other side, the Phillies were on just as much as on fire. They would have swept the Braves if not for a late rally in game 2 of that series. And, they're just as on fire as Diamondbacks. And then, on the AL side, obviously, we probably know Dodger fans are really rooting for an Astros win. At this point, like, rooting against Astros is not so much for any of the players, because there's only a couple that were even on the team back in 2017, but I just don't want their fan base to be happy, at least me personally. So, Rangers, Corey Seager's easy to root for. Probably another topic of conversation at some point this week about Corey Seager and if the Dodgers should have kept him around. But, as a Dodger fan, I'm not going to tell you who to root for or how to enjoy postseason baseball if you are or aren't. But, just as a Dodger fan, like, what is more beneficial to root for? Obviously, last year, it was different. Like, you're rooting for the Phillies over the Padres because we don't wish, the Padres and their fans success, because we don't want them to have that, success on their side. But with the Diamondbacks, I feel like it's a little bit different. It's all dependent on you, obviously. Like, I would, in different situations in the past, like a win for a certain team might be more beneficial to me because I don't have to deal with anybody in that direct realm in front of me. Like, I don't know any Diamondbacks fans, so the Diamondbacks win doesn't affect me. I don't really know any Phillies fans either, so if they win, it doesn't directly affect me either. But I think this year it's not so much Phillies. I think it's whoever you want it to be. The Diamondbacks don't really have any players that I dislike. It's not really a rival. Like, back a few years ago, like when the D-backs were kind of good for a little bit, Kirk Gibson was the manager. They had all those run-ins with Dodgers. when the Dodgers jumped in the pool and they, got all mad about it, would have been like, yeah, go Phillies, like for sure. But now it's just like, I don't really have a preference, whether it's Philly and honestly, you can look at it in different ways. Like there's one way to look at it is I would rather the Phillies or the D-backs win because that proves it's not just a fluke. Like if the Phillies had whatever, they beat the Brewers, but they thoroughly dominate the Dodgers in a sweep, and then they go on and get like swept or losing 5 to the Phillies, you're like, well, they just had one hot series, and now they're back to the team that, and the 84 win team that they were in the regular season, and that was kind of disappointing. I think you kind of want the D-backs to either do well for one or even win because that proves like, okay, it wasn't necessarily a fluke. They did catch fire. They're running hot, and that's kind of what's propelling them. I would imagine that might be a way to think about it. At this point, now the Dodgers are out, and I don't have a dislike towards D-backs or their fans or anybody of that nature associated with the D-backs. I personally, doesn't matter who wins this series. I'm kind of rooting for, as someone who has to work the series, I'm torn between, or like working in the World Series, like I'm going to be at games in the World Series. I'm kind of torn between, do I want a shorter flight or do I want a more fun experience? Because Arizona is a much shorter flight. That stadium is whatever to me. And it looked like their fan base showed out and then the NLDS against the Dodgers. But I went to Philly last year for the World Series, and that was such a fun, environment. It was rowdy, it was loud, it was crazy, it was intense. You could feel the energy, and but I also had to fly all the way to Philly. So in the end, all I'm saying is, if you still watch baseball, then I don't see a specific rooting interest at all, unless you're somebody that just doesn't want any NOS team to have success. Then you're rooting for the Phillies, and if you don't really care, maybe you're rooting for a good series. There's a lot of different things to root for, or you're just enjoying baseball. I think if both teams come in playing how they played to get to this point, I think it's going to be a really good series because Gallen and Merrill Kelly can match up with Nola and Wheeler, on paper. The offenses are both hot right now, hitting a lot of home runs and all of that. I think obviously the Phillies probably have the name value a little bit more, but the Diamondbacks have been hot. So it'll be a fun series to watch. I'm looking forward to watching it, or being a part of it a little bit with what I mentioned at the start of the show. So that's gonna do it for today's episode. Thank y'all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Make sure to find the 35 podcast and on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to listen to watch every day to become an everydayer. You can find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snydog. I'm at VinceSense91. You can DM either of us or both of us for any questions, comments, concerns, show ideas, topics. All that is on the table. You can also get a hold of us via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-LOCK. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car, if you're at home, here's my advice by podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.